Leo had always been a curious boy who loved to explore every corner of his small town, and on that warm summer morning, he woke up with a strange feeling in his chest that told him something important was about to happen. His grandmother had warned him many times about wandering too far into the woods behind their old farmhouse, but Leo could never resist the call of adventure that seemed to whisper through the tall pine trees. He was 12 years old now, and he believed he was brave enough to face whatever mysteries the forest might hold. The morning sun painted golden stripes across his bedroom floor as he jumped out of bed and pulled on his favorite blue jacket. His younger sister Maya was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table and eating her cereal with loud crunching sounds that filled the quiet house. "Where are you going so early?" Maya asked with her mouth full of food, her big brown eyes following her brother across the room. Leo grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and smiled at her in that mysterious way that always made her suspicious. He told her he was just going for a walk, nothing special, nothing to worry about. But Maya knew her brother better than anyone, and she could tell when he was hiding something exciting. Their grandmother was still sleeping in her room at the end of the hallway, and Leo was grateful for this because she would never let him venture into those woods alone. She had lived in this house for 60 years, and she always said the forest held secrets that were not meant for young eyes to see. Leo slipped out the back door and felt the cool morning air rush against his face like a gentle greeting from the world outside. The grass was still wet with dew, and his old sneakers made soft squishing sounds as he walked toward the tree line. Birds sang their morning songs high above in the branches, and somewhere in the distance, he could hear the creek that gave their town its name. Willow Creek was a small place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. The most thrilling event of the year was the autumn fair, where farmers showed off their biggest pumpkins and the local band played the same old songs they had been playing for decades. Leo often dreamed of adventure, of discovering hidden treasures and solving ancient mysteries like the heroes in his favorite books. As he entered the forest, the sunlight began to fade behind the thick canopy of leaves above his head. The trees grew closer together here, their branches reaching out like arms trying to embrace each other. Leo had walked this path many times before, but today something felt different. Something felt magical. He followed the familiar trail for about 20 minutes until he reached the old stone well that had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. His grandmother had told him that the well was over 200 years old, built by the first settlers who came to this land. She always told him to stay away from it because the stones were crumbling and the ground around it was unstable. But today, Leo noticed something he had never seen before. There was a faint blue light coming from deep within the well, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. He stepped closer, his heart pounding with excitement and fear mixed together in a way that made his hands tremble. He leaned over the edge of the well and peered down into the darkness below. The blue light was definitely there, glowing and flickering about 30 feet down where the water should have been. But there was no water in this well anymore. It had dried up many years ago, according to his grandmother. Leo picked up a small stone from the ground and dropped it into the well, counting the seconds until he heard it land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds passed before he heard a soft splash that echoed up through the stone walls. So there's water down there after all, and something beneath that water was making this strange blue light. He knew he should go home and tell someone about this discovery, but something inside him said this secret was meant for him alone. He had read enough adventure stories to know that heroes never walked away from mysteries like this one. Looking around, Leo spotted an old rope tied to a nearby tree, probably left behind by some farmer years ago. The rope looked strong enough to hold his weight, and the well had small gaps between its stones that could serve as footholds. A crazy idea began to form in his mind, an idea that would either lead him to the greatest adventure of his life or get him into the biggest trouble he had ever known. He tied one end of the rope around the tree trunk, making sure the knot was tight and secure. Then he tied the other end around his waist, creating a safety line that would catch him if he slipped. His hands were sweating now, and his heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. "This is probably a very bad idea," he whispered to himself, but he started climbing down anyway. The stones were slippery and covered with moss, making each step dangerous and uncertain. Leo moved slowly, testing each foothold before putting his full weight on it. The blue light grew brighter as he descended, casting strange shadows on the ancient walls around him. About halfway down, he heard a sound that made him freeze in place. It was a voice, soft and musical, singing a song in a language he had never heard before. The voice seemed to be coming from the water below, rising up through the darkness like smoke rising from a fire. Leo wanted to climb back up and run home as fast as his legs could carry him, but something about that voice held him in place. It was beautiful and sad at the same time, filled with longing and hope and something else he could not quite name. He took a deep breath and continued his descent, moving toward the mysterious light and the enchanting voice that called to him from the depths below. Whatever was down there, he had to see it for himself. The rope slipped through his fingers suddenly, and for one terrifying moment, Leo thought he was going to fall. But he grabbed onto a jutting stone and steadied himself, his whole body shaking with fear and excitement. Finally, his feet touched cold water, and he found himself standing on a narrow ledge just above the surface. The blue light was coming from something beneath the water, something that moved and swirled like a living creature made entirely of light. And then the voice stopped singing, and everything went silent except for the sound of Leo's breathing echoing off the stone walls. "I have been waiting for you," a voice said from the darkness, and Leo knew in that moment that his life would never be the same again. Leo pressed his back against the cold stone wall of the well, his eyes searching frantically through the darkness for the source of the voice. His legs trembled beneath him, and he could feel the icy water lapping at his ankles as he stood on that narrow ledge. "Who was there?" he called out, his voice cracking with fear, and the sound bounced off the walls and disappeared into the shadows above. The blue light beneath the water began to rise, slowly and gracefully, until it broke through the surface and floated in the air before him. Leo gasped and nearly lost his balance as he saw what the light truly was. It was a girl, or at least she looked like a girl, with long silver hair that floated around her head as if she were still underwater. Her skin glowed with that soft blue light he had seen from above, and her eyes were the color of the summer sky just before sunset. She wore a dress made of what looked like woven water, shimmering and flowing even though there was no wind in this underground place. "Do not be afraid," she said, and her voice was the same one that had been singing. "I mean you no harm, young explorer." Leo stared at her in amazement, his fear slowly being replaced by wonder and curiosity. He had read about magical creatures in his books, about fairies and spirits and beings from other worlds, but he had never actually believed they could be real. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The glowing girl smiled, and when she did, the whole well seemed to become a little bit brighter. She told him that her name was Iris, and she was a water spirit who had lived beneath this well for over 300 years. She explained that her kind had once been numerous in this land, guardians of the rivers and lakes and streams that gave life to all living things. "But now I am the last one," she said with sadness in her musical voice. The others faded away as the humans forgot about us, as they stopped believing in magic and stopped respecting the waters we protected. Leo listened with his mouth hanging open, unable to believe what he was hearing. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but Iris raised her glowing hand to stop him before he could speak. "I have been waiting for someone like you for a very long time," she continued. "Someone with a curious heart and a brave spirit. someone who would not run away when they saw something they could not explain. She told Leo that a great danger was coming to Willow Creek, a danger that only he could help prevent. Deep beneath the earth, an ancient creature had been sleeping for centuries, imprisoned by the water spirits long ago. But the creature was beginning to wake up, and when it did, it would destroy everything above ground in its rage. "Why can you not stop it yourself?" Leo asked, finally finding his voice. Iris shook her head, her silver hair swaying like seaweed in an invisible current. She explained that water spirits could not touch the creature because it was made of fire and darkness, the opposite of everything they represented. Only a human with a pure heart could enter the creature's prison and perform the ritual that would keep it sleeping for another 1,000 years. Leo felt his stomach drop like he had just gone over a big hill on a roller coaster. He was just a 12-year-old boy who liked to read adventure books and explore the woods behind his house. How could he possibly stop an ancient creature of fire and darkness? "I know you are scared," Iris said, floating closer to him until he could feel the cool mist that surrounded her. "But I have watched you from the waters of the creek, Leo. I have seen your kindness when you help injured animals, your courage when you stand up for your little sister, and your curiosity that never stops seeking answers." Leo was surprised that she knew his name and that she had been watching him. He thought about all the times he had played near the creek, skipping stones across its surface and catching frogs along its muddy banks. He had never suspected that someone might be watching him from beneath those gentle waters. "What would I have to do?" he asked, and his voice sounded braver than he felt. Iris smiled again, and she reached out to touch his hand with her glowing fingers. Her touch was cool and refreshing, like diving into a swimming pool on a hot summer day. She told him that he would need to find 3 objects hidden throughout the town of Willow Creek, objects that had been placed there by the water spirits long ago. The first object was a silver key hidden inside the oldest tree in the forest. The second was a crystal bottle buried beneath the foundation of the town's first church. And the third was a golden ring that had been passed down through generations of the oldest family in Willow Creek. With these 3 objects, you can enter the creature's prison and perform the binding ritual, Iris explained. But you must hurry, Leo. The creature grows stronger every day, and when the next full moon rises, it will break free from its chains. Leo looked up through the narrow opening of the well and tried to remember what phase the moon had been in last night. He thought it had been about half full, which meant he probably had less than 2 weeks to find all 3 objects and save the town. "How will I find these things?" he asked. "The forest is huge, and I do not even know which tree is the oldest." Iris told him that she would help him as much as she could. She explained that there was an old map hidden in his grandmother's house, a map that had been created by the original settlers who knew about the water spirits and their magic. His grandmother did not know about the map because it was hidden behind a loose stone in the fireplace, placed there by her great-great-grandfather many generations ago. Leo nodded, trying to remember everything Iris was telling him. His mind was spinning with questions and excitement and fear, all mixed together in a confusing storm of emotions. Part of him still wondered if this was all a very vivid dream, if he would wake up any moment now in his warm bed with the morning sun shining through his window. "This is real, Leo," Iris said, as if she could read his thoughts. "Everything you see and hear right now is as real as the stone beneath your feet and the water around your ankles." She told him it was time for him to return to the surface before his family began to worry about him. But before he climbed back up the well, she had one more thing to give him. Iris reached into the water beside her and pulled out a small blue stone that glowed with the same light as her skin. She pressed it into Leo's palm and told him that this stone would let him communicate with her whenever he needed help. All he had to do was hold it tight and think about her, and she would hear his thoughts no matter how far apart they were. "Be careful who you trust with this secret," she warned him. "There are those in your town who serve the dark creature. though they may not even know it themselves. The creature can reach into dreams and plant seeds of fear and anger in the hearts of humans. Leo put the glowing stone in his pocket and grabbed the rope to begin his climb back up. His arms were tired, and his fingers were scraped from the rough stone, but he pulled himself up with determination he did not know he had. Iris watched him from below, her glowing form growing smaller and smaller as he ascended toward the light above. When he finally reached the top of the well and pulled himself over the edge onto the solid ground, Leo lay on his back and stared up at the blue sky through the canopy of leaves. His clothes were wet and his body was exhausted, but his spirit was alive with a fire he had never felt before. He had a mission now, a purpose that was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The fate of Willow Creek rested on his shoulders, and he would not let everyone he loved be destroyed by some ancient monster. Leo stood up, brushed the dirt off his clothes, and began the walk back home. The forest seemed different now, more alive and magical than it had ever seemed before. Every tree might be hiding secrets, every rock might be covering treasures, and every shadow might be watching his every move. When he reached the edge of the woods, he could see his grandmother's farmhouse in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney. His adventure had begun, and there was no turning back now. Leo waited until his grandmother left for her weekly visit to the town market before he began searching for the hidden map. Maya was playing in her room with her dolls, so he had the living room all to himself. He walked over to the old stone fireplace that had been in this house since it was first built, and he began pressing on each stone to see if any of them were loose. After about 10 minutes of searching, he found it. One of the stones near the bottom right corner wiggled when he pushed on it. Leo grabbed the edges of the stone and pulled with all his strength, and suddenly it came free and clattered onto the wooden floor. Inside the hole where the stone had been, Leo saw a rolled-up piece of leather tied with a faded red ribbon. His hands trembled with excitement as he reached in and pulled out the ancient document. The leather was dry and cracked with age, but when he carefully unrolled it, he could see that the markings inside were still visible. It was indeed a map of Willow Creek, but not the town as Leo knew it. This map showed the area as it must have looked hundreds of years ago, with fewer buildings and more forest. Strange symbols were drawn at various points around the map, and Leo guessed these must be the locations of the 3 hidden objects. He pulled the glowing blue stone from his pocket and held it tight, thinking about Iris. Almost immediately, he felt a cool sensation wash over him, and he heard her voice inside his head. "You found the map," she said, and he could hear the smile in her words. "Now you must learn to read the old symbols." The marking that looks like a twisted branch shows where the oldest tree stands, deep in the heart of the forest. Leo studied the map until he found the symbol she described. It was located in an area of the forest he had never explored before, far beyond the abandoned well where he had found Iris. He memorized the route he would need to take and rolled the map back up, hiding it under his mattress where no one would find it. That afternoon, he told his grandmother that he was going to play by the creek with some friends from school. She nodded and reminded him to be home before dark, and Leo felt guilty for lying to her. But he knew she would never believe him if he told her the truth about water spirits and ancient creatures and magical maps. The journey through the forest took much longer than Leo expected. The trees grew thick and wild in this part of the woods, and there was no path to follow. He had to climb over fallen logs and push through bushes covered with thorns that scratched his arms and legs. Twice he thought he was lost, but each time he held the blue stone and Iris guided him back in the right direction. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking, Leo found himself standing before the most enormous tree he had ever seen. The trunk was so wide that it would take at least 10 people holding hands to wrap around it. The branches stretched up so high that Leo could not see where they ended, disappearing into the green canopy like the tree was holding up the sky itself. "This is the one," Iris whispered in his mind. "The silver key is hidden inside a hollow space where the roots meet the trunk. You must search carefully." Leo got down on his hands and knees and began examining the base of the giant tree. The roots were thick and gnarled, twisting in and out of the earth like the tentacles of some enormous octopus. He pushed aside dead leaves and dug through soft dirt until his fingers touched something cold and metallic. His heart leaped with joy as he pulled out a small silver key covered in dirt and rust. Despite its age, the key still had a faint shine to it, and Leo could see strange patterns carved into its surface. He wiped it clean on his shirt and held it up to admire his first treasure. "One down, 2 to go," he said to himself with a grin. But his celebration was cut short by a sound that made his blood run cold. Somewhere nearby, a branch snapped loudly, and Leo heard heavy footsteps approaching through the underbrush. He quickly shoved the key into his pocket and looked around for somewhere to hide. Without thinking, he scrambled up the trunk of the ancient tree, using the rough bark to pull himself onto the lowest branch. He climbed higher and higher until he found a spot where the leaves were thick enough to hide him from anyone looking up from below. Leo held his breath and watched as a figure emerged from the bushes and walked toward the tree. It was a man tall and thin with gray hair and a face that looked like it had never smiled. Leo recognized him immediately as Mr. Crawford, the town librarian who always stared at people with cold, suspicious eyes. Mr. Crawford walked slowly around the base of the tree, examining the ground where Leo had been digging. He bent down and touched the disturbed soil, and a dark expression crossed his face. Then he stood up and looked around the forest, turning in a slow circle as if he could sense that someone was watching him. "I know you are here," Mr. Crawford called out, and his voice sounded strange and hollow. "The master told me you would come. He feels your presence in his dreams, little boy." Leo pressed himself against the branch and tried not to make a single sound. His heart was pounding so loud he was afraid Mr. Crawford might hear it. Who was this master that Mr. Crawford spoke of? Could he be one of those people Iris warned him about, the ones who served the dark creature without knowing it? Mr. Crawford continued to search the area for several more minutes, poking through bushes and looking behind rocks. But he never thought to look up into the tree, and eventually he gave up and walked away, muttering angrily to himself. Leo stayed hidden for a long time after Mr. Crawford left, too scared to move in case it was a trick. Finally, Iris spoke in his mind and told him it was safe to come down. He climbed back to the ground on shaking legs and looked around nervously before heading back toward home. "Mr. Crawford is dangerous," Iris warned him. "The dark creature has been whispering to him for many years, filling his mind with promises of power and knowledge. He will try to stop you from completing your mission." Leo walked faster, jumping at every sound and shadow. The forest that had always felt like his second home now seemed threatening and full of hidden dangers. He could not shake the feeling that someone was watching him from behind every tree. When he finally burst out of the forest and saw the farmhouse in the distance, Leo felt like crying with relief. He ran across the field and through the back door, not stopping until he was safe inside the kitchen. His grandmother looked up from the pot she was stirring and frowned at his dirty clothes and scratched face. She asked him what happened, and Leo made up a story about falling down near the creek. She shook her head and told him to go clean up before dinner, and Leo was grateful that she did not ask any more questions. That night, Leo lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. He thought about the 2 objects he still needed to find and the dangers that waited for him. Mr. Crawford would be watching now, and who knew how many other people in town might be working for the dark creature. He pulled out the blue stone and held it against his chest, feeling its cool glow through his pajamas. Iris was out there somewhere, counting on him to save her and save the town. He could not give up now, no matter how scared he was. Tomorrow he would begin searching for the crystal bottle beneath the old church. It would be more difficult than finding the key because he would have to sneak into the church basement without anyone seeing him. But Leo was determined to succeed, even if it meant facing Mr. Crawford and whatever other servants the dark creature had. He closed his eyes and tried to clear his mind, and eventually the exhaustion of the day pulled him down into sleep. His dreams were filled with glowing lights and singing voices and shadows that chased him through endless dark tunnels. When he woke up the next morning, the sun was already high in the sky, and Maya was poking him in the arm and telling him breakfast was getting cold. Leo groaned and pulled himself out of bed, knowing that another dangerous day was waiting for him. The adventure was only beginning, and the hardest challenges still lay ahead. 3 days had passed since Leo found the silver key, and he still had not figured out how to get into the church basement. The old stone church stood in the center of town, and Pastor Williams was always there during the day. At night, all the doors were locked tight, and Leo had no idea how to pick a lock. He sat on the porch swing behind his grandmother's house, staring at the map and trying to think of a plan. Maya came outside and sat down next to him, kicking her legs back and forth and humming a little song to herself. "What is that paper?" she asked, leaning over to look at what he was holding. Leo quickly folded the map and shoved it under his leg. He told her it was nothing, just some homework he needed to finish. But Maya was not fooled, and she crossed her arms and gave him that stubborn look that meant she was not going to give up. "You have been acting really weird lately," she said. "You keep disappearing into the woods and coming back all dirty, and you talk in your sleep about glowing girls and monsters." Leo felt his face turn red. He had not realized he was talking in his sleep, and now he worried about what else he might have said. He tried to laugh it off and told Maya she must have been dreaming herself. "I am not stupid, Leo," Maya said firmly. "Whatever is going on, I want to help. You are my brother, and brothers and sisters are supposed to stick together." Leo looked at his little sister and felt a lump form in his throat. Maya was only 9 years old, too young to be involved in something this dangerous. But he could see in her eyes that she meant what she said, and he knew from experience that she could be incredibly stubborn when she wanted to be. He took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. He told Maya the whole story, starting from the moment he climbed down the well and ending with his encounter with Mr. Crawford in the forest. Her eyes grew wider and wider as he spoke, and when he finished, she sat in stunned silence for a long moment. "That is the coolest thing I have ever heard," she finally exclaimed, bouncing up and down with excitement. "A real water spirit. An ancient monster. Hidden treasures. This is like one of those adventure books you are always reading." Leo smiled despite his worries. Maya's enthusiasm was contagious, and for the first time since this all began, he did not feel so alone. He showed her the silver key and the glowing blue stone, and she gasped with amazement at how beautiful they were. "I actually know how to get into the church basement," Maya said with a mischievous grin. "There is a window on the back side that does not lock properly. Jenny Patterson showed it to me when we were playing hide and seek during the summer picnic." Leo stared at his sister in disbelief. All this time, he had been struggling with this problem, and Maya had the answer all along. He hugged her tight and told her she was the best sister in the whole world. That night, after their grandmother had gone to bed, Leo and Maya snuck out of the house and made their way through the quiet streets of Willow Creek. The moon was growing fuller every night, and Leo knew they were running out of time. They only had about a week left before the dark creature would break free from its prison. The church looked different at night, its old stone walls casting long shadows across the empty parking lot. Leo and Maya crept around to the back, staying low and trying not to make any noise. Just as Maya had said, there was a small window near the ground that was slightly open. Leo pushed the window inward and helped Maya climb through first. Then, he squeezed through after her, dropping down onto a dusty floor in the dark basement. He pulled out a small flashlight he had brought from home and clicked it on, sweeping the beam across the room. The basement was filled with old furniture, boxes of church decorations, and shelves lined with dusty books. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like curtains, and the air smelled like mold and forgotten memories. Leo consulted the map and tried to figure out where the crystal bottle might be hidden. "The map shows a symbol right where we are standing," he whispered to Maya. "But it looks like there should be something beneath us, maybe a secret room or a buried chamber." They began searching the floor, looking for any sign of a hidden entrance. Maya found it first, calling out quietly to Leo from behind a stack of old chairs. There was a metal ring set into one of the stone tiles, almost invisible under layers of dust and grime. Together, they pulled on the ring with all their strength, and slowly a heavy stone slab lifted up to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. A cold wind rushed up from below, carrying a strange smell that made Leo think of rain and rivers and deep underground lakes. "Maybe I should wait here and keep watch," Maya said, and Leo could hear the fear in her voice. He nodded and told her that was a good idea. He did not want her to face whatever was down there, and he felt better knowing someone would be watching for danger. He handed her the flashlight and told her to blink it 3 times if she heard anyone coming. Leo climbed down the stairs, using the dim blue glow from Iris's stone to light his way. The stairs went down and down, much deeper than he expected, until finally he reached the bottom and found himself in a small stone chamber. In the center of the chamber, sitting on a pedestal carved with strange symbols, was the crystal bottle Iris had described. It was beautiful, made of glass that seemed to contain swirling clouds, and it glowed with a soft white light. Leo walked toward it slowly, half expecting some trap or guardian to spring out at him. But nothing happened as he reached out and picked up the bottle. It was cool to the touch and surprisingly light, and when he held it up to his eye, he could see tiny flashes of lightning inside the clouds. "2 down, 1 to go," he whispered, and a smile spread across his face. He hurried back up the stairs and found Maya waiting nervously at the top. She gasped when she saw the crystal bottle and reached out to touch it with one finger. They carefully closed the stone slab and made sure everything looked undisturbed, then climbed back out through the window. The walk home felt lighter somehow, and Leo could not stop grinning even though the danger was far from over. They had done it. They had actually found the second object without getting caught. But as they approached the farmhouse, Leo noticed something that made his blood freeze in his veins. A light was on in the kitchen, and through the window he could see his grandmother sitting at the table, and across from her sat Mr. Crawford. "We have to hide," Leo hissed, pulling Maya behind a large bush. They watched through the window as Mr. Crawford talked to their grandmother, his thin lips moving rapidly, though they could not hear what he was saying. Their grandmother looked confused and worried, shaking her head at something he told her. "What is he doing here?" Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Leo did not know, but he had a terrible feeling that Mr. Crawford was talking about him. Maybe he was telling their grandmother that Leo had been trespassing, or maybe he was trying to find out if she knew anything about the hidden treasures. After what felt like hours, Mr. Crawford finally stood up and walked to the door. Their grandmother let him out, and Leo and Maya watched as he walked down the driveway and disappeared into the night. But just before he turned the corner, Mr. Crawford stopped and looked back at the house with a strange smile on his face. Leo felt a chill run down his spine. That smile told him everything he needed to know. Mr. Crawford knew something was going on, and he was not going to stop until he found out exactly what Leo was up to. They waited until the coast was clear, then snuck back into the house through the back door. Their grandmother was just turning off the kitchen light, and she did not hear them creep up the stairs to their rooms. Leo hid the crystal bottle with the silver key under a loose floorboard in his closet, then collapsed onto his bed with exhaustion. One more object remained, the golden ring held by the oldest family in Willow Creek. But who was this family, and how could he possibly convince them to give him their precious heirloom? Those questions would have to wait until tomorrow. For now, Leo closed his eyes and let sleep carry him away to dreams of victory and hope. The full moon was rising tonight, and Leo still had not found the golden ring. He had spent the last 4 days asking questions around town, trying to discover which family was the oldest in Willow Creek. But everyone gave him different answers, and time was running out faster than water through his fingers. He sat by the creek that afternoon, holding the blue stone and talking with Iris in his mind. She seemed weaker now, her voice fainter and more distant than before. She told him that the dark creature was beginning to stir, sending tremors through the underground waters that connected all the springs and wells in the area. "There must be something in your grandmother's house," Iris said weakly. "The settlers who built that farmhouse were among the first to arrive in this land. They were the ones who helped us imprison the creature." Leo's heart nearly stopped. Of course. Why had he not thought of this before? His own family might be the oldest family in Willow Creek. He jumped to his feet and ran back toward the farmhouse as fast as his legs could carry him. When he burst through the door, his grandmother was sitting in her rocking chair by the fireplace, knitting a scarf she had been working on for weeks. She looked up at him with surprise and asked what all the excitement was about. Leo knew he had to tell her the truth. There was no more time for secrets and lies. He sat down on the floor at her feet and told her everything, just as he had told Maya. He told her about Iris and the dark creature, about the silver key and the crystal bottle, and about Mr. Crawford, who served the monster in his dreams. His grandmother listened in silence, her knitting needles slowly coming to a stop in her hands. When Leo finished talking, he expected her to laugh or tell him he had been reading too many fantasy books. But instead, she reached up and touched a golden chain around her neck, pulling out a small ring that had been hidden beneath her collar. "I have been waiting my whole life for someone to come asking for this," she said, and tears were forming in her eyes. "My grandmother told me the story when I was just a little girl, told me that one day a brave young person would need this ring to save us all. I thought it was just a fairy tale, but I kept the ring safe all these years, just in case." Leo stared at the golden ring in amazement. It was simple but beautiful, with tiny blue gems set around the band that sparkled like drops of water in the sunlight. His grandmother unclasped the chain and placed the ring in his palm, closing his fingers around it. "I always knew you were special, Leo," she said with a proud smile. "Now go and do what needs to be done. Save our town and come back home safe to me." Leo hugged his grandmother tighter than he had ever hugged anyone before. Then he gathered Maya, who had been listening from the hallway, and together they headed back to the abandoned well in the forest. The sun was setting by the time they reached the clearing, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Leo could feel the ground trembling beneath his feet, and he knew the dark creature was fighting to break free from its prison. He pulled out the rope he had used before and began to climb down into the well. "Be careful," Maya called from above, her worried face peering down at him. When Leo reached the bottom, he found Iris waiting for him, but she looked different now. Her glow was dim and flickering, and she seemed almost transparent, like she might fade away at any moment. "You found all 3 objects," she said with a weak smile. "Now we must hurry. The creature will break free at midnight if we do not perform the ritual." Iris led Leo through a hidden passage at the bottom of the well, a tunnel that sloped downward into the earth. They walked for what felt like miles, the passage growing hotter and darker the deeper they went. Strange red light began to appear on the walls, pulsing like an angry heartbeat. Finally, They emerged into an enormous underground cavern, bigger than any building Leo had ever seen. And there, in the center of the cavern, was the dark creature. It was massive, a mountain of shadows and fire chained to the stone floor with links of glowing blue energy. Its eyes were like two burning suns, and when it saw Leo, it let out a roar that shook the entire cavern and made rocks fall from the ceiling. "The water spirits send a child to face me?" The creature bellowed, and its voice was like thunder and earthquakes combined. "I will destroy you and everything you love, little human." Leo wanted to run, wanted to climb back up that tunnel and never look back. But he thought about his grandmother and Maya, about all the people in Willow Creek who had no idea that a monster was about to destroy their homes. He had come too far to give up now. "Tell me what to do." He shouted to Iris over the roaring of the creature. Iris guided him to a small platform in front of the creature, where 3 empty slots were carved into the stone. She told him to place the silver key in the first slot, the crystal bottle in the second, and the golden ring in the third. Then he had to speak the words of the binding ritual. Leo placed each object in its slot, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped the ring. The creature thrashed and screamed, trying to break free from its chains before Leo could complete the ritual. The blue energy was cracking now, and Leo could see it would not hold for much longer. "Now speak the words," Iris cried. "I will say them, and you repeat after me." She began to chant in that strange language Leo had heard her singing before, and he repeated each phrase as best he could. The words felt strange on his tongue, like cool water flowing through his mouth. As he spoke, the 3 objects began to glow, each with its own color, silver and white and gold. The creature screamed in fury and made one final desperate lunge toward Leo. Its massive clawed hand broke free from one of the chains and swiped at him, missing his head by inches. Leo stumbled backward but kept chanting, refusing to stop even as death reached out for him. And then, with the final word of the ritual, everything exploded with light. The 3 colors merged together and shot toward the creature, wrapping around it like new chains made of pure magic. The creature howled and writhed, but the chains tightened and pulled it back down to the stone floor. Its eyes, which had burned so bright with hatred, slowly dimmed until they were nothing more than faint embers. "You may have won this time," the creature growled as it sank back into sleep. "But I will wake again, and next time there will be nitrogen monoxide one to stop me." Then silence fell over the cavern, broken only by Leo's heavy breathing and the soft dripping of water somewhere in the darkness. Iris floated over to Leo and touched his cheek with her glowing hand. She looked stronger now, brighter than she had been in days. She told him that the ritual had worked perfectly, and the creature would sleep for another 1,000 years. "You have saved us all, Leo," she said, with gratitude shining in her beautiful eyes. "Your name will be remembered in the songs of the water spirits for generations to come." Leo felt tears rolling down his cheeks, though he was not sure if they were from relief or joy or exhaustion. He had done it. He had actually saved his town. Iris guided him back through the tunnel and up to the bottom of the well. She told him that she would always be watching over him, just as she had watched over Willow Creek for 300 years. Whenever he needed her, all he had to do was hold the blue stone and think of her. Leo climbed up the rope and emerged from the well to find Maya and his grandmother, waiting for him under the light of the full moon. They rushed forward and wrapped him in their arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "You did it!" Maya cheered. "You actually saved the world." "I had help," Leo said, looking back at the well where he knew Iris was watching. The walk home was peaceful and quiet, the forest no longer feeling threatening or dangerous. Mr. Crawford was found the next morning wandering in a daze near the church, with no memory of any had happened. Whatever hold the dark creature had on him was broken, and he went back to being just a grumpy librarian. Life in Willow Creek returned to normal, but Leo knew that nothing would ever be the same for him. He had discovered that magic was real, that ordinary people could do extraordinary things, and that the greatest adventures were waiting for those brave enough to seek them out. And sometimes, late at night when everyone else was asleep, Leo would hold the blue stone and talk with Iris about everything and nothing, knowing that he had found a friend who would be with him forever